September 30th, 2021. Today I want to talk about some of the hidden history of bachelorsgrove.com itself and my introduction to this place in a way. So, I have a lot of one-on-one conversations out here, stuff that frankly I probably would never mention on YouTube or anywhere else. Some things that I do that I hope to plan to talk about in the future when I feel comfortable, when I feel like it's time or something like that. Now, some of the people watching these videos, I will obviously meet them here. And once in a while, like a few days ago, this is just a small example, this has happened a few times, oh, more than a few. They get here from like Pennsylvania or something. They said they haven't driven in I don't know, 10, 20 years. I'm like, well, why'd you come to Chicago? Why'd you come to Bachelors Grove? And he's like, well, I just wanted to visit Chicago, but I had to stop here. That's interesting. So we got to talking. He's been watching the channel or whatever on YouTube, and he asked me this question. He goes, I got the feeling you're hiding. And he stops. I go, hiding something? As in, not telling everything, like I'm holding back? He goes, yeah, I get that feeling. And others do too. And sometimes even outright say it on things like Bob Tracek's radio program, if you ever get around to watch or listening to some of that stuff. And there's a reason for it. When you got personal stories, especially, with this place, and you're going through weird stuff, you just kind of keep it to yourself. As much as I want to share it with everybody, so they can maybe even understand some things and just even partake in some of the fascination of the things that go on. I'm going to start with a real light one, but this was during my beginning years. So by now you probably noticed that I'm kind of a weird guy. I talk about things like putting thoughts out, and you get in tune with your environment, and so on and so forth. Now there's a lot of us out there, especially when they flock to places like Bachelors Grove. You meet a lot of like-minded people that deal with things that they don't share with others normally, and so we live this kind of weird life. When some of us deal with it like on a day-to-day basis, it gets pretty extreme. All of us probably go through some little things throughout our life, but when some of us deal with this like day-to-day, it gets to be a bit much. So I keep a lot of things to myself for various reasons, and one of them was this. I'm in my sleep. A lot of things happen in my sleep, and a lot of information comes and a lot of stuff, and one of them was around the time when I'm like, I'm investigating. This is around between 1996 and 2000. I'm like, collecting little bits of information on Bachelors Grove. As 2000 started to approach, I thought, well, maybe I should get in touch with, family members that have people buried here, things like that. We can get a web presence going, and I was just kind of toying with the idea and see how far it could go. And as time goes on, I started to get these weird things in my sleep happening, to where one time it was so strong where I woke up in complete utter paranoia, and I'm just so confused, while at the same time I got a sense of what it was, and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta buy bachelorsgrove.com. I didn't even actually think about the domain at the time. It was really weird. So this is just like, having a web presence is one thing, actually thinking of the name is another. And so I'm struggling out of bed. I'm so groggy. I'm grabbing for the table where the computer is, and this is back when I had AOL dial-up. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why do I need to do this? Why do I need to do this? So I'm really confused. And it started kind of coming to me when I was at the computer. I'm like, you need to buy this particular domain, because it's gonna disappear. This is the domain you need. And to me, actually, it was more like website address was in my head, but technically it's a domain. I'm trying to recite, what was really going on in my head. I'm probably even going to miss a few things. But anyway, so I'm going through this process, and it sounds crazy, right? And I don't even know how to buy a domain. Back then, it was like, duh, how do you do this? Now it's a joke. It's so easy. It's not hard to figure out. But here I am. I'm like, okay, well, I know this one person owns this website. How did they buy their domain? And that's kind of how it happened. And I just okay, they got it through that. So I just went there, and I bought it, purchased, done. And I'm like, and there was this overwhelming sense of relief, like, Now you can begin. Like, now I can begin. Like, what the hell? I'm like, this is weird. So what happens a few days later? So I get this email. I have to read it here off a tablet for you. I'll probably pop it up on the screen a little bit, but it comes from somebody named Stacy McArdle. She used to own hauntedpages.com. And Stacy, if you're out there, now you get to hear this little backstory. And she had a website on, I think it was like somewhere in here, GeoCities, that old free web page stuff. And she sent out an email because she wanted to start collecting stuff on Bachelor's Grove. She wanted to start like her own archive, sounding very much like what I was doing with the website today. So she says, thanks for getting back to me. I had no idea you were working on this too. Oddly, I started working on my Bachelor site on the 16th of June. You got the domain name on the 18th of June. Weird, because I was going to get that one next week. And it goes on, on some other stuff. But she says, I wish you great luck, and I look forward to seeing your site. And yeah, she was sending out like kind of like a mass email to a few people. Not too many people at the time in this one. Here's a little other hidden history on this. So back in the day, there were very few websites that had Bachelor's Grove material. One of them that was popular was prairieghosts.com. Troy Taylor writes books, all that kind of stuff back in the day. And for some reason, it was kind of funny. There was this guy named George Jaros, and I knew him through a friend, and he had a website he created when he was down at the University of Illinois. Now, I didn't quite like the page because some of his ideas were kind of like, come on, man, like that's not cool. He was showing things like glowing shoes, and it was just reflections of people's, reflective material on shoes, and so he had his take on it, and I was kind of like, like, oh God, my name is kind of associated with that. Sorry, George. That's just how I felt. But Stacy reached out to him as well. Now, that was on June 22nd. And some of you out there, hauntedchicago.com, where you got your Monty, your Mike, your Mark, your Lisa, and there's quite a few on here. There's Josh and some others. Those of you that are out there might remember this email from Stacy. And on here it was kind of funny to bring back retro stuff. It was Grove Hunter at AOL back then. Instead of it was Ghost Hunter, it was Grove Hunter, like Bachelor Grove, and of course George and the stuff. But she didn't know. It was like I had this paranoid feeling. Hopefully you're getting the gist of this. It's kind of like, it's weird how this kind of operates. You wake up with this information, and something about it was just way too important, and it just paranoid me. I'm like, I gotta get it. And there is more to this, but I just thought I'd like to share that for just kind of general stuff. And Stacy, if you're out there, some of you out there with the associated with Haunted Chicago, I never told Monty of these stories. So anyway, where was this other email? Let's see. She did eventually. She pulled her own website a couple days later, and I felt kind of bad. Like she was kind of cool. It seemed she was trying, and she was the one who first found the mushroom hunter is found dead in the woods here kind of thing, and that got me started with some of the newspapers. But she said, no, don't worry, don't feel bad that I pulled down the website. I just thought was kind of silly to have two websites out there, and again, wishes me the best of luck. So anyway, hopefully I could share some of these other little tidbits, because eventually things get more extreme as time goes on in really odd ways. Like, why am I pulled to the Grove? And again, a few days later, we had another person like, why am I being pulled here? Why I can't get this place off my mind? And I had to give them, a little talk about it. And now that I started understanding some things about that feeling, and a lot of it is kind of personal, but she started saying things like, oh, now this makes a lot of sense. That's why I was going through this and going through that. And hopefully we can have those discussions on video one day. I don't really interview many of those people. Actually, I don't remember interviewing any of them. Jeez. But there's a lot. There's a lot like that. And it's kind of like the similar process. You get this pull. And there's like this reason for each person. And some people will come here on their first day and just have an experience, things that are even unpublished, long before even I said anything on video, and this stuff wasn't even in books, and so on and so forth. Anyway, wow, this thing's going on for 10 minutes. Have fun. Take it for what you want. You know, some of us deal with these weird moments, and I shall return.